A break, and so Kelly stepped in, and he's going to be leading our meeting tonight. So for those of you who haven't heard, I'm Cole Tomberlane. I'm the president of the Longview chapter. Andrew Griffith here is our president of the entire East Texas Bourbon Society, and we are beyond honored to be hosting the first ever Texas Bourbon Shootout. So for you guys who are new and it's your first time here, we are flying in Jim Murray, who is the author of the annual Whiskey Bible, as well as the #1 whiskey critic in the world. So this guy, if it's Scotch, bourbon, rye, any type of whiskey, he's the go-to on it. Flying him in, he's going to taste the top 10 Texas bourbons live. So if you're a guest, you purchase tickets, you will get to taste exactly what he's tasting, which sets this apart from pretty much every other spirit competition we know of. So it's going to be an incredible event. We're honored to be hosting it. In very fitting, the power issue of Texas Monthly, we got the Texas Bourbon Shootout right there. So, yeah, thank you. We're very excited about that. So, what better award for the winner of the Texas Bourbon Shootout than a full-page ad in Texas Monthly promoting your bourbon as the best bourbon in Texas? So they'll win that, and of course some awesome, a big plaque to go on the wall, and the usual medals. So we're excited about that. We're blown away to be a part of that. So if you haven't bought your tickets, go ahead and buy them now. www.texasbourbonshootout.com. We try to make that fairly easy. This is a spinoff of our event we've done the last 6 years, coming up on our 6th annual Bourbon and Bow Ties. Preston Rader right here is the chairman for Bourbon and Bow Ties this year. We sold out, 4 weeks in advance?
Oh yeah, way in advance.
Yeah.
It's kind of a problem now.
So this is...
Wow. You sold out and then you guys just kept selling. And now you're really sold out.
Very sold out.
So the 4th year in a row we've sold out before the event. This year we sold out 4 weeks early. We expect the Texas Bourbon Shootout to get that way, but we need your help promoting it. So when you see it, share it on Facebook. We've done some Facebook Lives from these distilleries. So go to East Texas Bourbon Society, click share, tell your friends about it, give them the website. We need to keep selling tickets. Here's how that relates to you. So the money we make from the Texas Bourbon Shootout, proceeds are going to benefit the World of Wonders Children's Museum, which is awesome. Great cause. However, we are also retaining some of the earnings for the East Texas Bourbon Society, which will allow us to get our own private barrel picks and go on distillery tours and do some incredible things. So, obviously we're donating a lot of money to a really good cause, but the portion we're retaining will also be a good cause for us. So, very important that everybody keeps promoting that. So, just to put things in perspective, our best year of Bourbon and Bow Ties netted just under $300,000. We anticipate this to be the same way. We anticipate people to be begging for tickets like they're doing with Preston and I right now. But we need you guys to help make that happen. So, enough advertising. We've got Kelly here, who again so kindly stepped in, host of the Bearded Idiots podcast, as well as the infamous YouTube channel.
Don't listen to it, it's terrible.
This guy is known around the world. His beard is sponsored from someone in...
I got stuff from Russia.
Russia, yeah. There's a lot of inappropriate stories that will probably come out tonight.
No,
that is different from the East Texas Bourbon Society. We do not approve that message.
Yeah.
So everything that is appropriate is part of the deal tonight. So Kelly, thank you so much for doing this. And without further ado, we're going to kick it off for you.
All right. I guess I'm going to just kind of give you all a little background about myself. Why they asked me to come up here. I've only personally been drinking Scotch since about 2014. I literally had a conversation with myself one day walking through Harley's. I'm like, you know what? I'm a man. Men drink Scotch. It's time for me to start drinking Scotch. So I said, to hell with it. And I went over and I started at the beginning of the single malts. And I started with Glenlivet, worked through some different variations of Glenlivet, worked through some Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie. I just kind of went through all the single malts. And then I finally found my way to Isla And if anybody knows Isla, that'll be the last one we taste tonight. It's quite strong and aromatic, and I will leave that for whenever we taste it. But first tonight, I do want to kind of touch on who knows what single malt Scotch is? Do you know what makes a single malt Scotch? Anybody?
One's being in Scotland.
One's being in Scotland, correct. That's all Scotch has to be produced in Scotland.
It's not
Maybe
clean.
it's a single malt.
So a single malt is basically, the Scotch is malted barley and nothing else coming from a single distillery. That's all it really is to be a single malt. It's kind of lackluster, but that's what it is. So a few things to make a Scotch. Does anybody know how long it has to be matured in Scotland? Anybody? No? There's a minimum metric?
2 years and 1 day.
3 years and 1 day. Has to be to become a Scotch.
Don't worry, Kelly. There's always low interaction in the beginning, and then somewhere around that second tasting somehow.
Somewhere around the second or
It kicks
third.
in.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to impart a little bit of knowledge to everybody. Hopefully you'll learn a little something more than what you came with. But this first one is actually the way that we got them set up tonight. It's from the lightest to the heaviest. So this first one is Glenkinchie 12. This is from the lowlands of Scotland, which is directly above England. The area is actually coined the Lowland Ladies. There's only about 3 distilleries left in this area. This is a very light, more often triple distilled Scotch, where the more times you distill it, the lighter and the more floral it's going to become. So this area kind of got the nickname the Lowland Ladies because of that process. So this is going to be a lighter, more floral, more fruity Scotch. This specific region is actually it's 15 miles from Edinburgh in an area called the Garden of Scotland. This specific distillery was actually there was something I ain't gonna worry about it. So I made a bunch of notes, but I'm just gonna kind of wing it from here. So this one, these nice little glasses they got us, if you nose it, you can kind of get some floral and some fruity flavors on the nose. That waxiness, the waxiness that you might smell on the nose usually comes from the malt. That's kind of a signature flavor for some malt scotches. But
How many times did you say this was distilled?
this one actually I think is only twice distilled, but the other distilleries in the area are triple distilled. Auchentoshan being one of them. That's another triple distilled Scotch. So if you're like an Irish whiskey drinker, which most Irish whiskeys are triple distilled, and you want to kind of bridge that gap, Auchentoshan would probably be a good one for you to kind of transition into.
What are they trying to distill out of it?
Just the oils, some of the proteins. It's like most vodkas are distilled 5 and 6 times. The more you distill it, the higher the alcohol content's going to be. But you're going to get a lot of those oils, a lot of that meaty
Flavor.
A lot of the flavor is going to come out of it.
They'll say like impurities.
Yeah, impurities. Good.
Yeah, a harshness.
So this one, I'll go ahead and read off a little history about this one. So this one was founded in 1825, between 1825 and 1833, by a couple of brothers, and it was originally named the Milton Distillery. In 1853, the brothers went bankrupt, and the buildings of the distillery lay empty, being primarily used as a cow shed and also a sawmill for quite a few years. So fast forward 100 or so years, somebody finally reopens it, starts making good whiskey again, and then we get to reap the benefits today. So. Suckers, yeah. Anybody got any comments on this one?
I like it. Got like a chewing tobacco flavor.
Chewing tobacco?
Yeah. And even like kind of like a raisin, I guess.
So this
but it
one,
makes me think of-
I'll go ahead and read off some tasting notes for you. The nose should be soft and delicate with a grassy and slightly sweet fruity note. So
I like it. It's good.
It's very.
I like it too.
You kind of get the earthy tones and the grass on the nose. Anybody?
I can definitely, I've never had this before, and I can tell a definite difference to say a Lagavulin.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Kind of jumping around. Yeah.
Well, don't
Hugely
spoil.
different.
Hey, don't spoil the fun for everybody.
Well, that brings up something. If I can jump in, just as kind of, Cole and I are quick to admit that we are pretty ignorant to Scotch, which is why we've got the weirdo with the beardo doing this.
I'm just gonna fumble my way through it.
Just like a short raise hand. Who are big Scotch drinkers? Here. Who are
Enjoy.
medium Scotch drinkers?
Enjoy.
Is that a thing? Okay, yeah, medium. There you go. Yeah. So so we like Scotch, but it's not in our wheelhouse. So everyone, please offer feedback if you're new. It's very interactive on that stuff. There are no rhetorical questions on that. It's all, we're kind of fumbling through it and figuring out what we like. We all have different experience or levels on that. Whether we're talking about rye, whiskey, bourbons, Scotch, it doesn't matter.
I think it's fun to think about too when we have meetings, because I'm not I really haven't been a big bourbon
So it's
drinker.
different, yeah, exactly.
Until we started having these meetings, and then I started buying different bourbons.
Yeah,
Just to try them.
absolutely.
And like, when he talks about like a sweet fruity note, and a Scotch is much different than a
That's
sweet
correct, right.
fruity note
Uh-huh.
in a bourbon. And I found that out.
Yep.
Just, it's like my granddad used to joke he couldn't believe they used corn to make whiskey. He was Scottish.
Yeah.
So like, but I've kind of grown to like it a whole lot, and I never drank that. But it's different. It's a different
So this is like
note, I guess.
Yeah,
In
I just
the-
want to
in
put
the-
that note on there
in-
about
in the- in
for
the-
Scotches, yeah.
in the previous meetings, Cole and Andrew talk a lot about mash bills. Bourbon and rye is all about the mash bill for the most part. So bourbon is 51% corn, and then the rest is made up between either rye, barley, or wheat. And then there's some oddballs out there.
Bullshit.
49% bullshit, as Andrew likes to say. And same with rye, it's 51% rye, and then it's made up with other stuff. Whereas single malt Scotch is malted barley and water, and that's it. And then you've got 6 different variations just in this vast region with the same ingredients, water and malted barley. And the only thing that separates these guys is the distillation, where the water source comes from, where the barley comes from, but more importantly, like the type of distillation they use, whether it's pot stills or column stills, that stuff, and whether they smoke it whenever they dry the barley after during the malting process.
They'll get really into location too.
Oh yeah.
Like a Glen Scotch or a lowland, and then there's Highland, and then the real peaty Scotches
Go ahead.
are by coastal regions.
Just make it organic.
And they talk about that like wine,
Yeah.
like the location of
Terroir.
that
Yeah.
distillery and the kind of air that goes through it. Like you can tell a big difference between a Lefroy and a Glenlivet
Oh yeah.
because of where they sit.
So like what he just said, Glenlivet is a Speyside, which is in one of the northernmost areas of Scotland. But does anybody know where the term Speyside comes from? If you know, don't just yell it out. Anybody? So Speyside, Spey is the River Spey. All of these distilleries, anything from Speyside, are on the banks of the River Spey. So there are, in this area, and that's kind of a good segue because I think we're going into, this one's a Highland malt. But anyway, I was going to say that later. Oh, well, we're jumping ahead. So Speyside is all of these distilleries are on each side of the River Spey. And in this small location in northern Scotland, which is actually a part of the Highlands, you've got over half of the distilleries in all of Scotland situated in this small area, just because of the water source. Because it's so abundant, it's easy to produce, you don't have to worry about it, and so on and so forth. But up next, we have Oban 14. This is